Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Graventon. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, as we are bearing witness to the immediate aftermath of that shocking shooting that occurred at the Pulse Gay Nightclub in Orlando, Florida, yesterday morning, we see that the nefarious forces of the Fabian socialist left are already congregating in full strength to try and obfuscate the truth, to try and shift blame away from the open and obvious threat, which is that of Islamofascist terrorism, because as we noted on yesterday's program, the shooter, 29-year-old Omar Malik, or Marik, or whatever his name was, it doesn't really matter, he was calling 911 and professing loyalty to Abu al-Baghdadi and the Islamo-fascist state. And we already see that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists don't want Islam to be blamed for it. They want to reach out and either try and grab our guns or to go after Christians, to try and basically do an apologist type of mindset here of where what they're really attempting to do is say that Christians are worse. And we see this come out of the American Civil Liberties Union. And of course, it's not covered by the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the Elevating Mainstream Media, but rather PJ Media that I found this. It was a really squirrely staff attorney for the LGBT STFULMAOWTF group, and the AIDS group with the ACLU, saying that it was conservative Christians who have been pushing all of this sort of anti-homosexual legislative agenda for the past 6 months that actually caused this. And part of the reason he said this is because Muslims and homosexuals alike are a persecuted class. Look, this is classic divide and conquer. That is what the Fabian socialists are all about. There is no greater good for the United States of America. There is no propping up the American sovereigns, because really what it comes down to is if any American is attacked in such a manner as this, we are all attacked. But they don't want to admit to that because, remember, part of their whole balkanization strategy is to divide and conquer the American people, thereby making us become disenfranchised, demoralized, and just despondent. Because then they can come in and redefine the true proper scope and application of our representative republic. That has been their goal for the past century and a half, and we're not getting away from that. And there really is no way to candy coat that or to sugarcoat that. And what we see is that this man is trying to sit there and truly advocate that it was Christian conservatives that caused this. There is no weight of the evidence to show that. As an officer of the court, I am appalled. But I'm not surprised, because this has been an integral part of the so-called American Civil Liberties Union since its formation in 1920 by Roger Nash Baldwin.
The same Roger Nash Baldwin that said, and I quote, "Our whole auspice of existing is to use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution." This fits right in with their modus operandi by attacking Christianity, going directly after the First Amendment. And here's the thing. At that terroristic massacre that occurred over the weekend in Orlando, where at any point in time in the confines of that crime scene were there anything related to the Christian faith? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. The shooter was a devout
Muslim.
And the participants at Club Pulse, homosexuals, this and that, some of them may have said, well, I'm, Christian and this and that, and it happens, okay. I don't understand how that works, but okay. But there was no Christian motivation behind any of this. There's nothing. There's no Christian-based mens rea. There's no Christian-based actus rea. Therefore, without those two elements, how could they even be a part of that crime? It can't. It's not there. Mm-hmm. So for the ACLU to pull this crap, which is par for the course for them, see, this is what needs to happen to the ACLU. They need to be disbanded immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They are contradictory to the supreme law of the land. Therefore, they have no legal authority to exist. Period.
Well, looking at Roger Nash Baldwin, we see that he actually started this with the Anti-Militarization or Militant Union Association, this AMAU thing. And in 1917, he was thrown in prison for being a quote-unquote conscientious objector and refusing to sign up for the draft for World War I. And it was at that time that he decided to come up with the Civil Liberties Bureau to stand up for the legal rights of those who didn't want to do their duty and obligation as American citizens. And that's where the ACLU was born. And here's an interesting thing. I know that we've oft-times mentioned on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence about the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs and warning about how Harvard was full of Fabian socialists. Mm-hmm. Well, Roger Nash Baldwin got his training, both baccalaureate and master's degree, at Harvard. He did not have a law degree. He had a sociology degree. He managed to read the laws and sat for the bar and then became an attorney. And the whole time he was commingling with anarchists, and he was heavily involved with the International Workers of the World, or what was known in the common vernacular as the Wobblies. And what were they known for under their leader, Eugene V. Debs? Violent overthrow of the United States government to push for a workers' paradise. Well, Baldwin was all about more of a Fabian socialist approach. He wanted to do this in incremental steps, and that's why he created the ACLU. Now, he knew that it wouldn't work in the marketplace of ideas, and that the average American citizen would have never supported the ACLU if they knew their real agenda, so he couched it in saying that they were standing up for the constitutional rights of people. And it continued throughout the history of the ACLU that they flirted with the left. Now, they would try and point out that in the 1950s, they were standing there trying to stand in stark opposition to the communists, but actually, their local officials were all for the communists and were defending them. So it's this type of twisted game of semantics, this type of duplicity that we've been warning about since we first took off over the friendly airwaves on September 11th of 2015, that these games of semantics are done for a particular purpose and reason. And what they're trying to do is to hide the truth, to hide the ugly face of who they are. But they now feel that they are so close to achieving their twisted machinations and goals that they're taking the mask off. Mm-hmm. And the ugly truth is being, fully displayed in the open.
With the ACLU, they gained a lot of notoriety with one particular family that actually gained the attention of the entire country. Remember Helen Keller?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Her whole entire family were devout card-carrying communists. Every single one of them.
And so was Roger.
And so was Roger Nash Baldwin. Now, here's my question, okay? And I know things have changed pertaining to you know, taking the bar, sitting for the bar exam, becoming a lawyer. The standards have been raised, so to speak, as far as what you need to do in order to accomplish that
Right.
task or to be able to do that. So he never had to do anything that you had to do or what I'm going through.
No.
So he got the took the bar, became a lawyer, this and that, blah blah blah. But wait a second, he was imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
He was convicted of a felony. How could he hold a bar license, a license under the bar?
Well, the way that it worked back then is you had local bar associations, and the one in St. Louis, Missouri happened to be pretty red.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why we saw the bars rise as they have. But they too have been infiltrated by these Fabian socialists. You see,
Sure.
that's the real danger of Fabian socialism. It just creeps into every facet of society. And they are doing this in incremental fashion to poison the body politique of the United States. And we see that this plays out over and over and over again ad nauseum. And so basically, what this Chase Strangio, the one that said that it was Christians that caused the shooting at the Pulse Gay Nightclub there in Orlando, Florida, was doing, it's a further expansion of this twisted ideology that has been there for the 96 years that the ACLU has been in existence. And they're not standing up for the rights of people. They are doing exactly what Roger Nash Baldwin said their goal and objective was. And that's using the
people's rights.
Constitution
Yep.
to destroy the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's the other thing. Again, this fits right in with their agenda, with the whole psychological thing. Remember, he dealt with psychology. Now, with them saying that this particular representative, this lawyer, was saying it was Christianity that caused all this. Well, I suppose that we could say that it's your nationally recognized smorgasbord is what made lesbians fat.
Yeah.
It's fast food chains or all you can eat buffet restaurants are responsible for why lesbians are fat. I mean, there was a government funding for a study for that. Remember, so it's their whole ideology or agenda of, like you said, using things to twist things up. These twisted machinations, as you refer to them, again, it's hijacking of terminology, words, institutions, and even people, using them for what they need to, and then disposing of them. Next thing you know, the ACLU is going to say, well, climate change, that's all due to, not so much Islamic terrorism and ISIS and blah blah blah, which was all created because of deer hunters. There's no logical flow for what they're doing. And folks, I know it sounds like I'm stammering and starting, but see, that's the whole point. That's the gag. Because this is how these individuals think. They have to sit there and try and rationalize to themselves how things play out so that they can implement it. And then when it sounds good, like, yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, hey, you over there, go ahead and sign off on this. And, if you don't, well, we're just going to use you to blame you for some other kind of man-made atrocity or some kind of terroristic incident. That's their logical deduction and reasoning, which is completely illogical and contrary to reality.
Well, it's because what they're doing is they are moving on raw emotionalism. That's always been their goal. And because when you just rawly emote, it means that you become susceptible to manipulation. That's why we've been warning about the bizarre ascension of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian Donald J. Trump Bellini / Barron / Miller. Because he was trying to basically just overcome people with raw emotionalism and to manipulate them. It's the same playbook. But we see that now the knee-jerk reaction, the frothing at the mouth type of conjecture and ad hominem attacks that are just being thrown out by these people are growing worse and worse and worse. And yet there have been so many who have been calling for unity. Well, they don't want to unify. In fact, we're seeing a lot of them sit there and say, we've just got to get rid of guns. We're a gay community that's against guns, and you're anti-gay if you support the Second Amendment. But that's not to say all gay groups are that way. Certainly the Log Cabin Republicans and the Pink Pistols are out there demanding that Barack Hussein Obama admit that this is Islamo-fascist terrorism and that guns had nothing to do with it. And you know what I say to those guys? All
Kudos
the more
them.
power to you.
Yes, absolutely. Because, see, this is when, again, when people understand what the true issue is, when people understand exactly what's going on, and they get to the root of the problem, then, just like we've mentioned, Randy, civil discourse has to take place. Because it's the only way we can actually get to the solution and implement it, which is getting back to the Constitution, because that is the key. Now, the Quaff Commando gave a speech earlier today regarding this whole incident. Again, why it took him so long, I don't know.
Well, he's a Quaff waffler.
Sure. But here's the thing. He himself is utilizing these Fabian tactics and the same strategies that the ACLU is using. Classification of groups of people. When he sat there in his speech and he says, the LGBT community. Well, what about the constitutionalist community? What about the individuals like Randy and myself and our first class passengers that adhere to the Constitution? What about us? Because, see, you know what? We were attacked at that nightclub as well. Why? Because the Constitution binds all of us together as Americans. And again, as I mentioned last night on our episode, it doesn't matter. It's a non sequitur that those individuals were gay. The only thing that matters of those individuals that lost their life and were injured is that they were Americans. Period. Regardless if they were gay or not, they were Americans. And because it was an attack on Americans, it was an attack on Randy and myself, our first class listeners, and everybody else who holds American citizenship that adheres to the Constitution. See, that's what these radical jihadists want to do. They absolutely loathe and despise our Constitution because they ultimately can't destroy it. That's why they hate it so much. Because they know they can't get rid of it, so they're going to do everything that they can to make everybody's lives miserable. Because they're miserable themselves. Mommy and Daddykins never hugged them enough or cinched up their suicide vests tight enough for them when they were growing up. That's what happened.
Or they didn't strike long enough at the bread line. Who knows? What it really comes down to is that these people are seeking to destroy the United States of America from within by pitting American citizen against American citizen. They're the type of people that will sit there and find any reason to complain about the United States, and then also, at the same time, find a way to coalesce with a group that is standing in almost stark contradiction to the very thing they're pushing, like that Strangio guy being for the LGB, STFU, LMAO, STFU, WTF community, yet then saying that Muslims and that community should band together. I'm sorry, but I thought the Quran was part of the whole thing of Sharia law where they said that homosexuals are to be put to death. And that's why you see them being put to death all over the Middle East. You see, this is the thing they don't want to talk about, and it's because of the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism. And this is a perfect case and point of moral relativism, because what Strangio was doing there was trying to equate Christian morality with that of Islamic, but at the expense of Christianity, buoying up Islam. It's totally backwards, it's totally upside down, but that's exactly what the Fabian socialists always do. It's never about the truth. It's never about the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. They want to engage in this balkanization, which then makes it far easier to divide, conquer, and redefine the United States of America.
Sure. Now, here's the thing. We've oftentimes talked about fighting fire with fire. See, Strangio, just like you mentioned, he's calling for unification between the Islamic community and the LGBT community to band together and go after Christianity. Well, guess what, Strangio? You said Christianity was the cause of this problem? The next time that there's a terrorist attack on our soil, whether it's a mass shooting, a suicide bombing, what have you, you are directly responsible, because now you are trying to marry those terrorists with organizations within the United States and different quote-unquote communities to attack Christianity. So next time there's a terrorist attack on Americans, you are directly responsible, because you are the one who are advocating it, you are pushing for it, and that makes you an accessory.
And it's amazing to me that this guy can still practice law when he violates his oath of office. You see, we don't take that seriously enough. We do not take our oath of office seriously enough in the legal field. I take it very seriously, because the Constitution is everything. It is that important. If we do not stand by the Constitution, if we do not uphold and promote the Constitution, then we are going to continue to see this moral decay plague the United States of America, and we can ill afford it, particularly right now. What we're seeing here is vile hatred. And so many are trying to come out there. Even people on one of my social media accounts were trying to equate Christianity to this, saying that radical Christians were the ones that caused this. And I'm sitting there thinking, how do you come to that conclusion when the guy's sitting there saying that he's a camel jockey following Abu al-Baghdadi Ramalama Ding Dong?
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. None.
And it just goes to show how much they hate America, how much they hate the moral foundations of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And if we don't start to come to task with this, if we don't start holding these people accountable for their actions, words, and deeds, it's only going to get worse.
Well, the problem is, not only do they hate America, but they hate themselves.
Of course they do.
They hate themselves. They have no respect for anybody because they have no respect for themselves. They're nothing more than parasitic little troglodytes. Kind of like, I don't know, a tick. It's exactly what they are. They're a tick that has burrowed its way under the skin of the body politique. And nobody seems to know how to remove them. Yeah.
Well, they're using the Cloward Piven definition of politics, poly meaning many, ticks meaning blood-sucking creatures, to overwhelm the body politique. And that's their goal. It always has been.
It's just, for 96 years of their existence, there's been many, many people that have fought against them, even warned about them. Remember, Zygmunt Dobbs and Archibald Roosevelt that warned about these individuals. We've had various other organizations warning about them. In fact, there's actually the counterpart, the ACRU. And then we have the ACLJ, which actually both of those organizations defend and stand up for people's constitutional rights. And they use the Constitution to do so, not destroy the Constitution. See, the ACLU, when they want to use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution, they're using people's rights by twisting them and manipulating them in order to infringe upon other people's rights. That's a crime. It really, truly is criminal activity. Anytime you infringe upon anybody's constitutional rights by the exercising of your own, or even manipulation of your own or somebody else's, you're committing a crime. Mm-hmm. It really is simple, and again, the only reason that I could think of that we've gotten away from understanding that is the political correctness, moral relativism, throw in their indoctrination of the youth, and revisionist history.
And there was another ACLU attorney, Eunice Hayan Minro, who specializes in election and religious liberty law. He impugned the motives of Republican lawmakers who expressed sympathy for the victims by pointing out that many were sponsors of the First Amendment Defense Act legislation the ACLU considers anti-LGBT. Hey, you little jackwad there. Unis. Shut it. Go to hell. What we are talking about here is the deprivation of a fundamental and inalienable right, the right to life. That is something that if you truly understood the Constitution, you would be standing up with them for the solidarity and unity that we need to show when an enemy is attacking us. Whether we disagree with their lifestyle or not, that does not mean that we allow them to be killed. Eunice, is it that you just put such little value on human life that you can't wrap your little small mind around that? Maybe you need to give up your bar card, because I don't see how you passed law school, you fraud.
Yeah, eunuch. I'm just going to call him eunuch from now on. It's very simple to understand. The deprivation of rights it's a federal law. Mm-hmm. Federal law. You can look at U.S. Code Title 18, Section 241 and 242. You can also look at Title 42, Section 1983.
It looks like eunuch is a female. Well, it still applies. She's probably gender confused.
Sure. But hey, it's Christianity that's at fault for that, because they're, I can't orientate to what I really am.
Now, here's an interesting thing. She further characterized expressions of solidarity as useless, as many of the victims could be people of color. So she's trying to, again, this is that classical Fabian socialist attack of divide and conquer, attempting to label people. Why do we allow them to get away with this? Hey, eunuch, stop being a bigot. Eunuch, it's really, really not good, and you might want to change your last name, because R-H-O, that's a little hard to pronounce. What is it, Rue? Are you Eunuch Rue? Okay, Eunuch Rue. Why don't you give up your bar card?
Yeah, do it now. Just do it now. And anybody else that's within your so-called organization, the whole lot of you are contrary to the Constitution.
It gets richer, Jeremy. It gets richer. There's an update on the DC. Rue appears to have deleted her Twitter account.
Uh-oh.
Multiple attempts to locate her account on the social media platform were unsuccessful. What's the matter, Rue? What's the matter, Rue? What's the matter? You can't stay true to it. Is it that you realize that you are a fraud? Because we realize it.
Yep. And by the way, eunuch, we're not going anywhere. We don't have to go anywhere. See, when we speak about things, we have this thing called research. We familiarize ourselves with the facts before we open our mouths. Unlike you, who thinks that you are above the law. You think that because you belong to the ACLU that you can do this, this, and this, and nobody can touch you, because if they do, you're going to cry discrimination. You're going to say that you were attacked because of your beliefs and that you shouldn't have to deal with this because there's no safe space established for you.
Here's the interesting thing. I'm looking at her little mini bio on the ACLU. She appears to be of Vietnamese origin. Nothing wrong with that. But it says, Unic Hyun Min Roo, Advocacy and Policy Council, works at the ACLU's state-based affiliates across the country on legislation and advocacy relating to voter suppression, election reform, and religious freedom. Well, religious freedom, but yet you're sitting there saying that, no, if you want to go out and pass laws to keep people safe, say, in the bathroom, that's wicked evil. And maybe it's because they're just racist. They're racist deep down. Yeah, great. So let's see. She was previously on the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law, where she organized voter protection campaigns and litigated consumer fraud cases. Well, I tell you what, Ryu, why don't you go investigate yourself for fraud? Because that's exactly what you orchestrated. And as a fellow officer of the court, I'm going to tell you right now that you should be ashamed of yourself, but you don't have the courage to have shame. Well, maybe you do. Maybe that's why you deleted your Twitter account.
So, let's see. She advocated for religious freedom, but yet jumps onto this bandwagon of ostracizing and demonizing Christianity, works for an organization through various different affiliates that have done the exact same thing.
And she went to the University of Michigan Law School, Jeremy, so she was around...
Really?
In Michigan.
Maybe a call should be made to the University of Michigan Law School pertaining to this individual and their procurement of their Juris Doctor. Maybe that should be done. I don't know. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, it may be.
Yeah. See, this is what happens when people want to, commit acts of dumb faruquery. Okay? We don't take it lightly. We do not appreciate our fellow citizens' rights being attacked.
Yeah, we don't.
When you attack their rights, you're attacking our rights.
So here's another thing she did. She went on to retweet a user who claimed that many public officials would use the auspices of an LGBT tragedy to pursue an anti-Muslim agenda. Hello, the guy said that he was in support of ISIS. You know what ISIS has done?
And pledging allegiance to al-Baghdadi.
You know that's treason.
Yes,
sedition. Say that.
Yeah.
Sedition.
Treason.
Ryu, you should know that. I mean, that's kind of basic law 101.
Yep.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear. I guess the ACLU's attorneys are going from just really out there communists to, well...
poltroons?
I don't even want to insult poltroons.
I kind of feel bad about insulting eunuchs by calling her that.
Yeah. This is beyond the pale. This is beyond the pale. And we know that Omar Mateen was doing this because of not only where these people live, but because of their lifestyle. We may disagree with the lifestyle, but we're not running around going, ah, la, 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 and blowing ourselves up or shooting people.
Yeah. It has to stop. People want solidarity and unity. Fine. I have no problem with that. But again, as mentioned before, you have to have a basic concept and understanding of what truly needs to be utilized to unify around. When we allow ourselves to continue to be subjugated to our rights being used to attack our rights, at what point do we have to start pointing the fingers at ourselves? Mm-hmm. You know, we can only point the fingers so much and jab it into the chest and, flick them on the nose of individuals like Eunuch and Roger Nash Baldwin and all the various other
Fabians.
Fabians.
Yeah. Well, here, I've actually got Chase Strangio's direct quotes here. And this comes from the Catholic News Agency. And, see, this is great. In the hours after the shooting, ACLU attorney Chase Strangio skewered those who offered their thoughts and prayers for the victims and their families. He stated on Twitter, and I quote, You know what is gross? Your thoughts and prayers and Islamophobia after you created this anti-queer climate, he tweeted. You know what's gross? Strangio? You empowering terrorists in the United States. You advocating for this kind of destruction. You dancing on the graves of these people before they were even put into the grave. How disgusting can you get?
Their bodies weren't even cold yet.
You disgusting, troglodytic, worthless piece of excrement. I think I'm fair in saying that.
I think even that's giving them too much credit, Randy. Because
Probably.
Here's the fact of the matter. Again, making statements like that creates you as being an accessory and a provocateur of any and all terrorist attacks against American citizens from here on out. It makes you an accomplice. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't understand how he comes up with this whole thing of Christianity is the one that created, the queer movement or the gay movement and this and that. Let's see. The Bible speaks about, being against it. And so let's see, it was I know where it came from. It was the Christianity organization, the whole embodiment of Christianity that set up organizations like the Rainbow Coalition, the LGBT community, NAMBLA, and all these other different organizations for that cause. They created all of these different things, put them out there as kind of like bait in order to, get people to fight amongst themselves and become balkanized. Mm-hmm. Wait a second. So Christianity is rooted in Fabianism? How in the blue hell does that work?
You know what's great? The ACLU was also trying to close down Catholic hospitals if they refused to perform abortions and sterilizations.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that religious liberty? How is that standing up with the free exercise clause? You see, here's the thing. They play lip service to freedom of religion, but it's only to certain religions, only to certain people. They are creating these insular and discrete minorities. Well, quit. Because the United States of America is a nation of laws.
So there it is. You can practice whatever religion you like so long as it conforms to their agenda.
Of course.
You can practice and exercise any right that you wish as long as it conforms to their agenda. So it fits their narrative. That's the whole thing behind this. And see, again, We have to look back through history. Let's look back at Nazi Germany, which came, later after the ACLU, but Adolf Hitler adopted so many different things from the ACLU. Remember, the ACLU was a big supporter of Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, which Adolf Hitler happened to adore Margaret Sanger as well. When she fled the United States because of various different charges and acts that she committed against the citizens of the United States, and she fled over to Europe. Yeah, guess what, folks? She was actually hanging out with Hitler when she did that.
Of course she was.
She was hanging out with the Fabians.
Now,
Hitler idolized her. And Hans Göring idolized her even more. Hermann Göring. Yeah, well, Nazis.
Yeah.
They all idolized her equally.
Yeah.
So, again, the ACLU is rooted in communism, yet, guess what? The Nazis used communism to destroy communism and usher in a larger, bolder sense of socialism at the behest of the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society had their tentacles entrenched into communism because they came about after communism, but the whole ideologies behind that are rooted in Fabianism existed before communism. They go way back. Way, way back.
Here's another thing that Strangio said. The Christian right has introduced 200 anti-LGBT bills in the last 6 months, and people are blaming Islam for this? No. Hashtag Pulse Nightclub. Strangio, where the hell is the causational connection here? You're an attorney. Map it out. Where is the causation? If you don't have causation, you're making a specious statement.
It's conjecture.
It's wide-eyed speculation.
Sure.
If he tried to bring that up into court, the first thing I'd do is objection calls for speculation.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And this is the caliber of lawyers at the ACLU? Really? Really? My dead grandfather practices law better, and he's dead.
I wonder how hard it would be to get one of these ACLU little troglodytes on the show to have a little civil discourse with them. Oh, it'd be damn near impossible because none of them would ever show up. Why is that? I wonder why that is. They'll sit there and they'll motorboat their mouths for everybody to hear them, but yet when they're called out on it, they back away, run, tuck their tails, and crawl under a rock.
Every bar association in the United States needs to investigate the ACLU. Right now.
Yes.
Right now. Because what this is doing is harming people's access to the law, people's ability to exercise their rights. These attorneys are clearly, open, and obviously violating their oath of office. It's time to call an end to this.
I think we should take it a step further. Congress should open investigations into the ACLU.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Establish an Article I court, appoint a special prosecutor, and go after them.
Absolutely. Because what they are doing here is they are attempting to establish a state religion. That of atheism. Or that of Islamo-atheism. It is the most disgusting thing, particularly to use a tragedy like this for politicization. But they did it with the Paul Wellstone funeral. You remember that? What was that, 2002, 2003?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Where they essentially danced on the grave of their congressman and his family, or senator. I don't remember exactly what he was, but They turn that into an attack the Republicans fest. Their depravity, their hedonism, their destruction knows no bounds and knows no limits. Well, enough is enough. This is the United States of America. We don't tolerate garbage and nonsense like this.
See, whatever happened to American citizens standing shoulder to shoulder with each other, regardless of religion, creed, sex, color, what have you?
Well, I'll tell you right now, it was balkanization. Look at the way that they have embraced this other twisted ideology that has always been espoused by the Fabian socialist left, identity politics. Identity politics. In other words, we're going to hyphenate America. We're going to attack the national character, heritage, spirit, and identity of the United States of America and then replace it with these oft-times competing identities and ideologies. That's what they're working towards. Again, it's all back to divide and conquer, because that's what their whole system's based off of. They can't act any other way. They don't know any other method or modus operandi to get their goals accomplished. Why? Because they know they'd be skewered and eviscerated in the marketplace of ideas. Why? Because it's as Aristotle said in his Art of Rhetoric, that the truth is much easier to accept, much easier to espouse than a lie. But their whole political philosophy and ideology and bent is based on nothing but a slew and plethora of lies.
See, all this is boiled down to something that's very, very simple. It reminds me of an individual, a social outcast in school, that they, on their own, they don't lack, or they don't have the self-esteem or the wherewithal to be able to make friends. So because they can't make friends with certain individuals, what they'll do is they'll tell a certain group of individuals that this group of individuals said this, and then they'll run to the other group of individuals and do the exact same thing, and then they'll go to 3 or 4 different other groups, and they'll get all these individuals fighting and arguing amongst themselves, and then they sit back and they relish in the misery that they've created, because misery loves company. Since they're completely antisocial, and that's what these individuals in the ACLU are. They're antisocial nitwits. They can't stand on their own 2 feet, therefore they have to bring everybody down by creating this absolute mutually assured destruction, for the lack of a better term, for all these other organizations to tear each other down so that they can revel in it. And then they want to come riding in and say, oh, well, we could solve this. That's not right what you're doing to this person. And the sad thing about it is, all these other groups that are fighting against each other are so enraged and so emotionally raw that they don't even understand what happened to them, why they're even doing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just
they can't even understand the concept that they were duped again into being pitted against each other. It's amazing.
They don't even care. They don't even care. Yeah. Meanwhile, we see that Alex Jones is trying to call this terrorist attack a false flag. So you've got the morons in the ACLU blaming Christians, and then you have this nitwit, fraud, con artist of himself, again trying to make it appear as though it's just some false flag thing. If I'm not mistaken, he was a 9/11 truther too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
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 Tells me all I need to know about him.
Alex Jones. Oh, individuals like that, it's Well, this has got to be a false flag. Come on, folks. Everybody's sitting here doing this and doing that, and blah 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 blah. And, well, I sound like I've got a bunch of squirrel nuts jam packed into my cheeks. Blah, 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 blah. Shut up and go to hell.
And here's the other thing: a co-worker, former co-worker of Mateen, said that political correctness was part of the reason why he had never been fired, even when they started to suspect that he was having these radical terrorist leanings. He was a security guard. He passed mental health checks and all of this stuff, and they didn't fire him because he's a Muslim. And you know what group brought that about? What group pushed for that sort of madness to take root and come into being in the United States? Groups like the ACLU.
I was just going to say, I'm going to take a stab in the dark on this and say the ACLU.
Mm-hmm. This has got to stop. It has got to stop. We have got to get back to sanity in America. And we can't do that when we're continuing to allow these Fabian socialists to destroy our society. We just can't.
Again, it goes back to you can only point the finger so many times and for so long at these individuals doing this before you have to realize that there's 3 more fingers pointing back at you.
And then, of course, the father of Omar Mateen is a Taliban supporter and says God will punish homosexuals. Yet this little troglodyte over at the ACLU, that strangio, I don't want to use bad language here, folks. I'm really biting my tongue here.
It's not easy, folks. Trust us. It really is not easy.
Remember that this guy's parents are from Afghanistan. They support the Taliban. And they said God will punish homosexuals. I refuse, or rather, I fail to see how conservatives or Christians or breathing human beings that are not Islamofascists could be responsible for this. We didn't create this. Climate change, like Vermont Senator Nerdface Bernie Sanders tries to say, climate change created terrorism. If I drink a little bit more, maybe I can make that even more believable than I originally thought. That's what they do. They obfuscate the truth. They reach for these far-reaching, outlandish conclusions, and it has no basis in reality whatsoever.
You tell a lie often enough and repeat it long enough, eventually it becomes the truth. And that's what the ACLU has been doing for the past 90-some odd years. That is what the Fabians have been doing for the past century and a half. This is what individuals in our own government have been doing ever since they took office. They latch onto this idea, this adoption of these phrases of labeling individuals, segregating. See, this is what really pisses me off. Segregation is something that has been utilized as a jumping off point of protecting people's rights or defending people's rights. And yet they're segregating the American people. The Christian community, the LGBT community, the black community, this community, the penguin rapist community, so on and so forth. They create all of these different little communities. Why? Because it sounds better to people. It's more accepting. It's more open. Knock it off. Just stop. We've declared war on political correctness. It's time to stop using these stupid and retarded terminologies and machinations and bastardizations of words and phrases. Stop it.
Well, the Washington Examiner has a thing. Apparently, there's a production of the Broadway smash Hamilton, about Alexander Hamilton, I'm assuming. They're not going to use muskets in the performance anymore in response to this Orlando attack. Why? Does that make any sense? No, none of this makes any sense.
Enter in revisionist history.
Always, always.
Jeez.
It would be laughable if the consequences weren't so dire, if we were not watching the unraveling of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours right before our eyes. And people like that eunuch Rue and the little strange fellow, they are contributing to this. And it makes sense, because Roger Nash Baldwin was all about destroying the United States. He was all about replacing it with an anarchist system. Well, you can see that when you go after the fundamental and inalienable rights of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, that's what you get. You get chaos and anarchy. It's because they don't believe in the natural law, and they're doing everything in their power to attack, deprive, destroy, belittle, and besmirch the natural law and the fundamental and inalienable rights of each and every one of us.
Well, under federal law, specifically Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 242, that makes them co-conspirators.
Of course it does.
They're co-conspirators against and ensuing the deprivation of people's rights.
Yeah.
See, now it all comes back full circle. Completely all the way back around. So now that we've presented the evidence to show that the ACLU is a criminal organization, people want to talk about the mafias and all these other gangs and all these other organized crime syndicates. Look at the ACLU.
Yeah, none of the crime families have a thing on the ACLU.
Right. So here's it. You know what? This is what else needs to happen, Randy. Congress opens their investigation into the ACLU, and they hit them with the RICO statutes.
Absolutely.
Bam. Done. Problem solved.
It may seem like we're reaching out for straws here, but this is literally what we have to do, because they are working relentlessly and tirelessly towards the complete and utter eradication of the American ideal, the American spirit. They hate us. You can see this in the way that they pander to the enemies of the United States. They've done it for the 96 years that they've been in existence. They have always been anti-Christianity. Look back to how it was the ACLU that organized the Scopes monkey trial. That was a law that wasn't being enforced in Tennessee. They were doing that for publicity. They were doing that to get the ACLU recognized.
But see, we're not reaching out for straws here, Randy. What we're doing is we're calling them to the carpet. We're calling them out for exactly what they are. Now, what's the ACLU going to do? File a lawsuit against us? Oh, please do. Please. Please. Because that will give us the chance to actually get right in your face and further expose you for exactly what you are. A bunch of troglodytic, anti-American terrorists. Because you are, in fact, terrorists. Why? We've already presented the evidence for that. You're co-conspirators. You're accessories to these nefarious acts. You are condoning them.
And they are acting in an unlawful
Absolutely.
manner.
And when two or more people engage in the same activity...
That's conspiracy.
That is conspiracy, which means that they can be charged for the same thing. So if you are advocating and you are perpetuating this for terrorists and the LGBT community to unify together behind Christianity, you are creating that whole scenario that dichotomy, that scenario to play out. You are advocating for that. It would be no different than if you were to advocate for someone to go on a serial killing rampage and supporting them by trying to demonize everything that was diametrically opposed to it. It's the same thing. It's the same logical progression that happens.
And here's another thing For the ACLU, you claim to be defending the United States Constitution. You claim to be the vanguard who always stands up for the rights of the people. Why are you not going out and standing against Barack Hussein Obama and nerdface
Bernie Sanders, who says that Walmart sells fully automatic AR-15s because, I'm hitting the source again pretty hard, and I get lost, and I need to go to the nursing home because,
why are you not standing up against these people that are trying to deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms? Are you trying to say that the Second Amendment is not a viable part of the Constitution? If that's the case, you need a very, very lengthy remedial course on the Constitution, and it'll start with a swift kick in the rear.
Yeah, along with the preamble to the Bill of Rights being read to you over and over and over again by Larry King ad nauseum until it sinks in. See, again, you want to portray yourselves as some kind of advocates for this and that. You want to do all these things, but yet when called on, your bluff is called, you do nothing. You're going to run away and hide. We all know you're not going to file a lawsuit against us here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. You're not going to do it. Why? First of all, you'd have no ground to do it. There'd be no standing. Second of all, even if it even came to that point, you'd lose. And you know you would lose. When faced with adversity that is completely contradictory to your agenda and it tears it down, what do? You run away and hide. You drop everything and you scamper away. Because you're cowards. You're pathetic cowards. You're a waste of skin, and you're taking up air that I could be enjoying with breathing it in. Go away. Better yet, just go to hell.
And see, here we see that in Madison, Wisconsin, the ACLU is filing a motion to basically try and get rid of Wisconsin's voter ID law. Now, wait a minute. Wouldn't that be aiding and abetting terrorists so that they could go in and not have to show ID, and maybe they'd go shoot up a voting poll or a voting booth?
But they wouldn't even need to have to register to vote to do that, because polling places are supposed to be gun-free zones.
Well, so was that nightclub.
So was that nightclub, but see, this is their ill-fated logic. Well, you can't get rid of the voter ID or we have to get rid of the voter ID so we make it harder for people to come and shoot it up. Really? Really? So, in other words, you want not only that scenario to possibly play out, but you want individuals to become part of our electoral process that will cast the vote for whoever they're paid to vote for, because they don't have to show ID, so they can vote as many times as they want. You might as well just get rid of the whole voter registration altogether at that point, because that's what it's coming down to. Again, it's incrementalization. They have to start somewhere. And there's always been this press of getting rid of voter ID. Voter ID. No, I want people to be able to prove who the hell they say they are when they go to cast the vote.
Yeah. And so we see that the ACLU is attacking Catholic hospitals. They're attacking Christians all over the place. They're attacking our free speech. They only like free speech when it works towards their agenda. And their agenda since the beginning has been against the United States. They're trying to go against everything that is in the benefit of the popular sovereigns. And again, they very rarely defend the Second Amendment. They very rarely take correct stances. And in fact, there was one of their leaders in Georgia who resigned because she said that her kids were made a little nervous by the transgender bathroom issue. They forced her to resign for exercising her free speech right.
So, in other words, she was no longer useful for their idiocy.
Correct.
See, I wonder when these individuals that are being used as useful idiots, when they're no longer useful for these organizations, one of these individuals is going to do something about that. When are they going to speak up and say, hey, you know what? This is what they're all about. Yes, I was a part of that, but now I've had, a reality check by, some blunt force trauma to my head that kind of kicked my brain into actual proper thinking mode. And this is what they've always been about. These are things that they paid me to do, so on and so forth. And a lot of people won't come out and say those things or take that kind of action because they're afraid that they're going to be prosecuted for certain things. Here's the thing. If you're engaged in activity to where under good faith you're led to believe that it is not criminal activity, I don't know, because maybe you've been indoctrinated, and then when you realize that what it is wrong, and then you come out and speak out against that, I don't think a court in the world will hold you accountable for that. They're going to be more focused on and more latched onto those nefarious activities of that organization. They're not going to be able to hold you accountable for that because you were acting in good faith at that point in time.
Yeah.
See, this is part of the problem where, again, it goes hand in hand, and it's this whole wishy-washy back and forth type scenario to where people do something, but then when they realize it's wrong, they don't want to stand up and say anything. They're afraid. But prior to that, they'll stand up and speak out for their rights, but then they back down from it. When you make that choice, when you make that determination, and you commit yourself to doing something, it's like what Randy and I are doing. We've committed ourselves to empowering the popular sovereigns, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. We've made that commitment. We're not going anywhere. We're not backing down. We don't care who comes knocking on our doors, whether it be the ACLU, whether it be any other organization that takes offense to what we're saying. I don't care if they're offended or not. I can give two craps less. It makes no difference to me. They don't have the right to not be offended. Nobody has the right to not be offended. We are committed to empowering individuals in this country with the solution to all of our problems. Our shared Constitution. We're not going to back down from that. We're not going to waver on it. We're not going to throw it aside. We're not going to play nicey-nice with these people. We've declared war on political correctness, and we've essentially, Randy, I think it would be safe to say that, in a manner of speaking, we're declaring war on organizations that are hell-bent on infringing upon everybody's constitutional rights.
Of course. We have to be. We have to be. And the whole thing is, the ACLU is not responding to any requests from the conservative journalists that are trying to get in deeper with this story, to get the facts, to get their comments on the statements by these employees and representatives of the organization. Why? Because they know deep down that this is going to work against them each and every time, that it is not going to play out well, that it's not going to fit their propagandistic agenda, and it is going to turn people against the ACLU. But look, the ACLU has been pushing for Obama's executive immigration reform, quote unquote, unquote. They have been pushing to get rid of voter ID. They've been pushing to infringe on so many of our fundamental and inalienable rights. We can't just ignore these things, folks. This is a turning point. We have to say either you are with the Constitution or you are against the Constitution. And I have a special dislike and distrust of groups that lie. about supporting the Constitution and defending the Constitution when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. These organizations, from their inception, have been about tearing this country apart. Roger Nash Baldwin even wrote a book in 1927 talking about the so-called liberties in the Soviet Union, praising the Soviet Union. You want to talk about a society that would not support our Constitution? It would be the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this is... We could take this to a whole new level, Randy, with regards to certain other individuals that want to use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When laws or rulings are made that are contrary to the Constitution, and they want to... Well, I'll just give an example. This whole issue about the birth certificate, the whole debacle, it was all started by Philip Berg, one of Hillary Clinton's attorney friends, at her behest, by the way, back in 2008 with Obama. She's the one who started the whole thing. Why would she do that? Why would she attack her own in order to institute this? Because that's how the Fabians work. They will throw each other under the bus if it means that the sacrificing of one or two or three of their own people to take down 1, 2, or 3,000 of their opposition. They'll gladly do it. They will make that sacrifice at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. This is why she set all of this up. Again, Hillary Clinton is a very patient and methodical individual. She's very dangerous. But see, we know this. We know what her antics are. We know what her background is. We know what her agenda is. Therefore, knowing those certain things, it allows us to remove certain elements of danger away from that to where, because why? We can now combat that. We know how to defend against that. So here's
in 1940, the ACLU leadership was caught up in the Red Scare. Is that surprising?
No. So here's the point of this. In this, when I brought up the birth certificate issue, all these individuals want to say, well, the Supreme Court says that, because of, Vattel's book, The Law of Nations, it defines U.S. citizenship. See, first of all, Vattel's book, The Law of Nations, was never published in English until after the Constitution was ratified and the Bill of Rights was amended to the Constitution. Okay? Second of all, it was a book on political theory. It has no authority or impetus on any kind of ruling by our courts. It would be like taking the Communist Manifesto and using that to make the determinations in the Supreme Court. The only document that can be utilized by our courts for making determinations is the Constitution, as per Article 6, Clause 2, and Article 3. That's it. So when they want to take these documents, and again, this is what the Fabians and organizations like the ACLU, they'll do. They'll take all this stuff, and Roger Nash Baldwin in his book, he's praising the socialists and the communists. He's praising, the Soviet Union. When he does all of that stuff, he's integrating that into his agenda with the ACLU to perpetuate the destruction of our Constitution. Mm-hmm. It's no different than if the courts were to do the same thing, and people not having an understanding of how the legal system works, what the foundational principles of what the courts even exist on, or how they can make their rulings even works. Again, all of that is brought about because of indoctrination and revisionist history.
And it's interesting to note that one of the struggles that the early ACLU had during World War II was that they couldn't just keep supporting these type of totalitarian viewpoints that they had originally, because all of a sudden they started looking like the Nazis and even the communists to a lesser degree. And it really hurt them, because in 1938 we saw that the House of Un-American Activities Committee was formed, and it was originally in 1938 to uncover sedition and treason within the United States. They had witnesses who testified at the hearings that the ACLU was a leading actor in all of this stuff, but they quickly changed their tune and quickly started providing assistance to the Un-American Activities Committee. Why? Because they had to shield their leadership. They had to shield the people like Roger Nash Baldwin, who died in 1981.
Yeah. So they had to modify their narrative.
Of course.
And when I say modify their narrative, they had to cower, regroup, go back and crawl under a rock, and rethink their strategy, and then come up with a new one. Sound familiar, folks? Does this sound familiar? That's Fabianism. And the Fabians, see, this is what sets the Fabians apart from any other nefarious group of people, whether it be the communists or just the regular run-of-the-mill socialists, Leninists, Stalinists, fascists. They were able to do that in a minimal fashion. They've had to do it, but not to the degree of all these other groups. Because the Fabians figured something out. They figured, well, if we're just patient, if we tone things down, instead of pushing for this straight agenda, if we tone it down and we do it in parts and with incrementalization, it won't be as noticeable. We'll be able to reach a broader span of an audience, and by the time anybody realizes what's going on, we'll be deeply rooted and entrenched within society that nobody will be able to pluck us out.
You just have to be amazed to see how much that they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and just how relentless they are on forcing their agenda down our throats. And it's not about the Constitution for them, other than to use it to attack the Constitution. And that has been their modus operandi. And this idea of the separation of church and state, one of the justices, Justice Hugo Black, was very heavily influenced by the ACLU. He was the one that said that separation of church and state means that there has to be a wall built and very high. But no, he needs to go back. Well, he needed to. He's now since worm bait. But
Yeah.
he should have gone back and read what James Madison said with respect to separation of church and state. It was not to be some great big huge wall like the Great Wall of China or the Great Wall of Coifdom. It was supposed to be a preventative step so that the state would not create a Church of England. That's all it was. It's just amazing, because when you look at what it is they're doing, it's attacking the very natural law foundations of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours.
Yeah, and preventing the states, that preventative stop, preventing the states from creating a Church of England. Well, let's look at the Church of England. The Church of England was a very heavy influence on Parliament. They were such an influence back then with laws or rules that were implemented and made. See, Madison understood that. Madison looked at it as actually in a prophetic way. If the states were able to do that and create a Church of England type atmosphere, then the states would be able to actually influence law that would pertain to or be more persuaded or lopsided for that particular state.
Well,
As opposed to, I don't know, equal protection under the laws.
Well, here's the thing, though. The states could create a state religion. It's
Sure.
Congress that can't create it.
Right. And that's the issue. This is where the rub comes in. Madison, still, again, he didn't want it to, because when you were, if it was able to be created like that, okay? Where's the reins on it of it actually becoming too big? See, it was all about the limited scope of government, even at the state level with Madison.
Of course.
Even at the state level. See, he didn't even though the states can create a religion or a, church, because Congress cannot establish laws as per the First Amendment. But even Madison had enough foresight to understand that even that would be dangerous.
Well,
even that could
would be
grow into
violative of full faith and credit.
Sure.
Clause.
Sure, and that's what I'm getting at is it would not be in the true sense of limited government. It would not be within the confines of our Constitution. See, everybody talks about, well, we want limited government. Well, we have limited government. We have a document that has limited the government. It's the Constitution. It's not the Constitution. Again, this is where the ACLU would try and say, well, the Constitution is the reason why our government's out of control. That's the kind of mindset that they would have, which is completely contradictory to what the Constitution actually says. The Constitution is the limitations of the government.
Well, you see, they try and paint it as this whole negative rights thing.
Yeah.
Because it limits them.
Yeah.
Well, of course it's going to limit you if what you're trying to do goes against the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of the Constitution.
Well, it's going to limit them because, first of all, government doesn't have rights and states don't have rights.
Well, of course, but never forget about Article 6, Clause 2.
Mm-hmm.
The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. This is what the ACLU doesn't get. But, of course, our response to the ACLU is 6-2 or fight.
Yep. And then they can go to hell.
Of course. It comes down to we have to return to a modicum of sanity in this country. And as we have oft-times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, the key to unlocking all of this has been with us since the inception of this country over 230 years ago. The Constitution itself. It really is that simple. And I know it seems that we repeat it too often, but no, it is that significant and that important, and far too many groups are working at direct odds to that because they have an agenda that is about destroying all that we hold near and dear in this country. That's why you see people like Chase Strangio and that eunuch Ryu trying to go out and attack everything that is of decency and value. And it's all for a propagandistic agenda that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States. And that's why I think, at least in the eunuch's case, that she deleted her Twitter account. Because she knew that would come back to haunt her. She knew that would come back to tarnish the ACLU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And guess what the ACLU is going to do? They're going to pitch her to the curb because she's no longer useful to them.
Well, it's like a mafia.
Yeah. They're going to show up like Al Capone with a Louisville Slugger. Proverbially speaking, of course, but that's how they operate. And again, like you said, none of the other organized crime syndicates have anything on the ACLU.
No.
They have nothing on them. I mean, let's even look at the funding. The ACLU is funded beyond what all the other crime syndicates can even muster together combined times 10.
Well, I mean, look, its supposed budget is $133.4 million per annum.
I don't even think the UAW's budget is that high.
I don't either. It has a staff of approximately 200 attorneys, volunteers of 2,000 attorneys, and has a membership of 500,000. That is just beyond the pale. And it shows that they are using this money, they are using this budget not to advance the interests of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, but of all of these nefarious groups that want to destroy us.
So
And
this money that is within the coffers of the ACLU, that money is actually brought in through donations, correct?
Correct.
So individuals that are donating money to the ACLU, well, guess what? They could be made co-conspirators now, too.
Uh-huh. Of course they can.
Way to go, folks. Those of you that donate to the ACLU, you now have blood on your hands.
And we have to be like this, because that is how they fight. That is the way they go after people.
Oh, we're going to be unrelenting. Period. There's no other way about it. We've been backed into a corner. We have no other way to go. The ceiling is too low. The floor is becoming unshakable to where we're just going to fall through it, and the walls are closing in. We have no other choice but to fight back. And these individuals, they brought this on. They want to become bullies. They want to do this. They want to poke and prod at individuals and back them into a corner. Guess what? It's going to be to your own demise.
This is why the constitutional compositionist movement is coming about. It has to.
Oh, it's here. It's here.
It's here. And it's here because these groups are acting in direct violation of our fundamental and inalienable rights, which were endowed to us by our Creator, the God of nature. They want to deny that. They want to strip and tear down the natural law tenets that underpin our government and our Constitution. Well, enough is enough. We will not stand for this. We will not tolerate these attacks on our sacred liberties anymore. This is the United States of America, and it is high time that we, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, stand in solidarity and unity, shoulder to shoulder, and reject these attacks on our fundamental rights.
It's time. It's time to act. It's beyond time to act. Again, we're backed into a corner. We have to work our way out of that corner, and the only way to do it is to hit these issues head on. Take on these individuals face to face, toe to toe. And see, here's the other thing about bullying. See, the ACLU, they're one of the largest funded bullies within our country. 9 times out of 10, when you stand up to a bully and you confront them, what
They
do?
fall.
Not only do they fall, they run away. Mm-hmm. They run away. These
and that's
individuals,
what has to be done.
they are banking on this raw emotionalism of people being afraid.
Well,
You
we're
have
not
nothing
afraid.
to fear. If you stand on the Constitution, if you have a full working understanding and knowledge of our shared Constitution, there's nothing to be afraid of.
And that's exactly why we do these shows. That's why we come and speak into these microphones. It is to empower you, because this is our country. The Constitution belongs to us, and we are here to ensure that it stays that way. That's why we've made this pledge to lead the constitutional compositionist movement's construction. because it must be done. Because everywhere we turn right now, we see their attacks having an effect, tearing this nation apart at the seams. Well, that comes to an end right here and right now. You see, we provide you with these practicable, real-world solutions, and we will never, ever back down from that. And with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back with one last round of alcohol. I guarantee you she will not blame your faith for whatever selection of alcohol you choose to enjoy, or none if you choose
or
not
bully
to.
And she certainly won't bully you into, drinking some other kind of alcohol that you don't prefer.
Sure. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your Captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We invite you to leave any questions and comments or concerns you have, either here on our YouTube page or on our Facebook page or our Google Plus page. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We couldn't do this without you. In fact, we do this for you. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, our Blogspot page that has audio blogs, and the Cafe Press account.
Cafe Press account. It's a real wonderful thing. It really is. And I'm certainly not going to bully anybody into stopping by there, perusing through the novelties and the items on there. Do so at your leisure, folks. Show your friends and your family as you, or if you choose to, splurge on yourselves. Treat yourselves to some of our apparel or novelties, such as our drinking glasses, which, by the way, folks, our flight attendant will happily refill those drinking glasses for you every episode, at the end of every episode, without any problems, questions, or intimidation.
As long as that flight attendant is you yourselves, folks. With that said, folks, we will see you next time. Do take care.